Hello and good day. For much of the 20th century, Malaysia was embroiled in a guerrilla war with the Malayan National Liberation Army, the military wing of the Malayan Communist Party. These subversive elements were bent on using violence to turn the country into a perceived socialist paradise. Also known as communist terrorists, OCTs, the MNLA was well organized and utterly ruthless in executing their beliefs. Many Malaysians paid the price. However, their ambitions never came close to succeeding due to the efforts of the Malaysian security forces, including the Royal Malaysian Police. Among the police was one special branch officer known as Scorpio, the Communist Eraser. Scorpio quickly built up a reputation as somebody who brought results against the communists, operating with distinction in the states of Pahang, Perak, Kelantan and Sarawak. In his distinguished career, Scorpio accounted for 2,018 enemy personnel killed, captured or surrendered, and generated intelligence that has severely disrupted the communist plans throughout Malaysia. Later on, he founded the E3F, the police special branch unit that scored significant blows against the communist underground in Kuala Lumpur and throughout the whole of Malaysia. The nation owes a debt of gratitude to this man, but his story has remained untold for almost half a century due to it being classified. Now, the time has come for him to tell his story. This is the story of Senior Assistant Commissioner 1, Datuk Leong Chee Woh.
My name is Datuk Leong Chee Woh. I served 34 years in the Royal Malaysian Police and I founded the elite E3F unit. I was born in the year 1929 on the 11th day of November. For the whole period up to my end of my school days, I was living in Taipei. And, I attended King Edward VII School and English school at that time until I graduated in my senior Cambridge. It took me a long time to finish my senior Cambridge because my studies were interrupted by the Japanese occupation from 41 to 45 for 4 years. In that period, I was subjected to a lot of unnecessary inconveniences, if you want to put it that way, because I had to learn a lot of trades. I was involved in smuggling at the age of about 12 years old. I was enjoying. But before I did all that, when the Japanese first came, all the students from schools were forced to go and study Japanese. So I had to go and learn Japanese for 1 whole year. But I think the Japanese found me quite smart. So they took me out of school and made me work with a Japanese doctor in the military. You see, people take it that once the doctor was with the army, the Kempitai was part of the army. So this doctor was serving with the Kempitai. So people thought I was recruited in, which was not true. And that stigma of me working for the Kempitai stuck with me until I finished school. So after a while, when I found that the conditions were quite lax for me to get out, I decided to get out run away from the doctor. And I went into a lot of petty trade. And you can say, those days the Japanese were very strict regarding rationing and so forth. So somehow I managed to get into a bit of smuggling business. And that was smuggling rice from Bagan, which is 22 miles from my house. I used to go there in the morning, buy the stuff I wanted to smuggle, and took it by train all the way to Kuala Lumpur. After the British occupation forces came back in, so all the Japanese prisoners were imprisoned in one place in Kampung Ting. So at that time I had been involved in learning how to repair watches. So what I did was, I had an idea that I could exploit on the Japanese prisoners and the British soldiers. My idea was, if I could go to the fence there and talk to the Japanese. Remember, I already had about 2 years Japanese training. So when I went to talk, I was quite fluent with the Japanese. And I also say, oh, what have you got? You're short of food, have you got watches and all? So this was more or less like a barter trade. And I go in, take one bunch of banana, and they'll give me one watch. So because I was working in the watch shop, I took that watch, I went back, I gave it a new dial, new casing, polish everything up, and then I will go and tempt the British soldiers. So for that one bunch of banana, I could get about 15 tins of cigarette. Those days all cigarettes were in tins, and some sardines, blah, blah, blah. All that would be worth about 60, 70 ringgit, dollars at that time. For 20 cents now, I also make that much. And I would have continued, but, age was catching up. My parents were always chasing me that when school reopens, you must go and so forth. So I went back to school. For 4 years, I went to school. Actually, normally you finish school at 16 years old. I finished school at 20 years old because of the 4 years of war. And then when I first went back to school, I didn't was very interested in schooling anymore because I have been subjected to these little business practices. So I thought if I continue with business, I may, after time, I may do well. But it was not to be that way. After I graduated from school, I went and joined as a clerk in the Taiping Town Council and worked there. Actually, I was attached to the secretary of the council. To all intents and purposes, his qualification was only standard 5 in English, but I had senior Cambridge. So I had to do whatever he told me to do because virtually he was like my boss. So every time he come out with draft, it didn't please my eye. I also alter it for him. And I also get a lot of telling off, don't be smart, by correcting my English, blah, blah, blah. So after a while, when I stopped correcting his English, one day he called me up and said, don't be like a bloody parrot and type what I write for you. So those days, I had quite a wild temper, at that stage because of mistreatment in other places. So I whacked him and I left the service and didn't even take the pay for that month of June. So for June, July, August, I was lingering around Taiping area in my house. And then it just happened in August, one teacher of mine, when I was in senior Cambridge, he was teacher teaching Chinese. Before he saw me, he joined the Taiping Police as an interpreter. So when we were good friends, and then he asked me, hey, what are you doing now after you left the town council? I said, no, just loitering. Oh, there's a vacancy in the police where he's working for a job of a clerk and interpreter. Would I like to join? So I said, better than nothing to do. I went and applied for the job and I got it. But much to my regret, we did later, because of my training in the town council, I was given a very short and quick training to become a chief clerk. Unknown to me at that time, after 15 days, I was posted to Selama.